Hey there, I'm going to go over the process of experimentation to teach yourself a new skill for the first bit. If you'd like an overview of how to get the wood texture in the thumbnail, you can just jump to 432. Alright, so why bother talking about this? Have you ever carefully followed a recipe and then ended up with something that tastes terrible? The author of the recipe probably expected you to have a certain level of skill, but what if you are a true novice? You need a way to get from zero to basic competency before tutorials are of much use. That's where anti-talent comes in. You've probably heard that talent only makes a difference for something like the top 5% of performers in any given skill. For most low-stakes situations, someone who practices and is diligent can outperform someone who is talented but unpracticed. Anti-talent learning is like the process a chatbot AI uses to brute force its way into becoming a conversationalist. It's about trying everything and seeing what works, regardless of whether you have any natural talent for the skill. Okay, how to teach yourself a new skill using anti-talent. Let's say you want to teach yourself how to make a realistic wood grain texture for plank flooring. You know that you want to work with XPS foam this time, so you start by collecting a variety of examples from YouTube and Pinterest. I've linked a playlist I used to make this video, if you'd like an example or you want to recreate what I did. Next, you do a high-level survey of the different techniques used in your examples. You can do this by watching them at 2x speed or by jumping around in the timeline. You'll find a lot of repetitions, and you can whittle the list down to a reasonable number of distinct styles so you can examine more carefully. Once you have a good understanding of the different techniques, you can start experimenting. Don't worry about being sophisticated. Just try everything and see what you like. One of the reasons it can be hard to learn from artists you admire, you don't know what elements of their work you actually like. But you've been trained since you were reading Highlights magazine how to do this. You can learn to educate your eyes by staring and comparing. Put two different techniques next to each other and ask yourself, which one do I like better? Why? What are the key differences? This process will help you identify the elements that are important for creating a realistic wood grain texture. It will also help you to trim the fat from many methodologies. Once you know what elements are actually contributing to the success of your project, you can discard the ones that aren't. Continue the round-robin process until you find a combination that you like, can do easily, and looks good. As a side benefit, this process will also teach you a lot of lessons. Going into any project, there's always unknown unknowns. These are the things that you only discover by accident, generally in the form of an unexpected failure. Batching these failures together in a short and palatable time period can help you to learn from them without taking them personally. Remember, you're not looking for an end product at this stage, you're just trying to learn. Anti-talent learning is a brute force approach to learning new skills. It's about trying everything and seeing what works, regardless of whether you have any natural talent for the skill. This approach can be very effective, especially for people who are struggling to learn new skills using traditional methods. It's also a great way to develop a deeper understanding of a skill and to become a more creative problem solver. Okay, on to the specifics of this wood texture. Here's what I learned. Number 1, XPS foam has a grain. To find it, experiment with texturing until you find the direction that produces the cleanest results. This matters less for tools that use heat to texture rather than blades. 2, don't use the factory side edge of the foam. It's soft, it rips easily, and doesn't hold detail. 3, angle your texturing tools at about a 45-degree angle and push only as hard as you need to prevent ripping. If your wire brush always rips the foam, use a normal pair of scissors to cut away the wires that are sticking out to prevent them from tearing your foam. 4, texture looks best when you combine methods, such as a coarse texture and a fine texture. Complexity helps to create a sense of scale. When using a coarse texture, be careful not to over-texture the foam so you'll still have virgin foam to use your fine scale texture on. Is this 5? I think this is 5. 5. When using a variable temperature hot pen, experiment to find the sweet spot for easy but controlled texturing. Don't worry about correcting an unsteady hand. The wood grain benefits from meandering a bit, and any accidental gouges can make good knots in the wood. 6. A hot wire can make really subtle cuts if you use a low temperature and go slow. Too high a temperature and you'll make larger divisions. 7. Many different techniques worked well for me in texturing XPS foam. Using the coarse texture, fine texture pairing as a guide, you can experiment with any combination of combs, pens, X-Acto knives, wire brushes, miniature saws, hot pens, and so on. Now let's sit back and watch it come together. getting the paint wet so it flows between the cracks of the boards. Highlighting wood with pure yellow has become my favorite way of adding some color to what could be a dull paint scheme. The mica powder was an experiment based on something from the excellent Kathy Millett. Check her video out in the linked playlist. Taking another look at her video, I did almost nothing according to her instructions, which is probably why it turned out so overwhelmingly silver, which I toned down with some washes. Pin lining with black wash to bring those shadows back up after the washes. I'm thrilled with how easy this was and how nice it looks. I'm thinking of making a notebook to keep track of my favorite ways to accomplish a given look, which I'll call the canon, partly because canonical is the coolest word. I'll record future efforts to challenge the current methods and expand the range of well-tested techniques. See you next time.